In 2019, my daughter and I went to Japan. One of the things we did there was go to the ramen factory and learn how to make ramen from scratch. Making ramen was my first ever video on this channel. I've learned so much about making videos since then that I thought it's time for an update. Let me show you how to make ramen from scratch at home.
Full recipe in the description below. In this video, I'm making ramen for two. Adjust the recipe as needed. Place a measuring cup on a scale and pour in 95 grams of hot water. Then add 5 grams of salt. This makes a 5% salt solution. Stir to dissolve the salt. Place a mixing bowl on the scale with a sieve on top and tare it to 0. Measure in 200 grams of high-grade flour or bread flour. Sift the flour into the bowl. Make a little well in the flour and then pour the warm saline water. Using warm water softens the dough. In a circular motion, stir in more flour into the well of water until you can start kneading the dough. Then tip the content of the bowl onto the kitchen bench and start kneading. If it seems too dry, use a water mister to moisten the dough. Cover the dough and let rest for 30 minutes. Meanwhile, prepare the ramen eggs. Put a small pot of water to boil, then gently lower 2 eggs. Set your timer for 7 minutes. Prepare an ice bath for the eggs. When the timer goes off, take the eggs out of the boiling water and lower into the ice bath. Peel the eggs and then place in a small jar that would fit both eggs nicely. The eggs should be nice and soft like this. Into the jar, add about 3 tablespoons of soy sauce, and 1 tablespoon of mirin. Screw the lid on and then place the jar on the side. Back to the ramen dough. The dough should now be softer. At the ramen factory, they told us to punch the dough 100 times. I find this process a bit tedious. Instead, I place the dough in a plastic bag. Then I put the bag on the floor and step on it to flatten. Take the flattened dough out of the bag and fold it in thirds. Put it back in the bag and again step on it to flatten. Fold again in thirds and this time leave again to rest for about 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, flatten the dough again on the floor. And then take the dough out of the bag. Sprinkle generously on both sides with rice flour. Using a rolling pin, roll it out to about 5 millimeters thick. Set your pasta machine to the thickest setting. I'll link to the model I have in the description below. Pass the flattened dough through once. Sprinkle again with rice flour if needed. Then change the setting to the next thin number and roll again. At some stage, it may be easier to then cut the length in half. Roll again till you get to setting number 4. Then hang the dough on a stick to slightly dry out. I find that doing this makes cleaner cuts in the noodle strips later. Now we can start with the soup base. Soak about 3 dry shiitake mushrooms in boiling water and set aside for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, place mushroom and steeping liquid in a pot. Add about 1 tablespoon of your favorite miso paste. I like to use dashi miso. Add a bit more water and then set the pot on medium heat to simmer. Then we need to prepare the bowl seasonings. We like our ramen spicy, so we add about a teaspoon of gochujang or Korean chili paste into each bowl. Then divide the soy sauce and mirin from the ramen eggs equally into each bowl. Add about a teaspoon of sesame seed oil, and then stir to mix the sauce together. Then set aside. Ramen bowls need to have sliced spring onions. You can add any vegetables you have too. For example, thinly sliced cabbage or Chinese cabbage. I'll be using these pea shoots that I've grown as microgreens. If you like tofu, add cubed tofu into the simmering pot of miso and mushrooms. Now we can cut the noodles. Get a small tray ready to catch the cut noodles and sprinkle this with rice flour. Set the cutting part of the pasta machine on, and we'll use the narrow cutter for the ramen. Run the sheets of ramen through the cutter onto the tray. Now bring a pot of water to boil. Make sure it is at a rolling boil before you start adding the noodles. Gently lower the noodles and stir carefully. Set your timer to 2 minutes. Then strain the noodles out of the boiling water. Divide the noodles into the 2 bowls with a seasoning and toss to cover the noodles. Get your ramen eggs, slice it in half, and place on top of the noodles. And then place other ramen toppings. My daughter doesn't like shiitake mushrooms, so I get all of those. She likes tofu though, so she gets more tofu, including the fried tofu that I've added. Divide the miso soup among the 2 bowls. cut some of the pea shoots and place on top of the noodles. Then sprinkle with sliced spring onions. And as they say in Japan, itadakimasu!